Nehemiah, and I read a chapter. I'm sure you don't want me to read it again because it is not a very easy chapter to read. And could you imagine when I'll have to recapitulate, go over this chapter? Actually, when I was studying for tonight, I wanted to skip that chapter. and I had a plan how to skip it, but I don't think the Lord would allow me to. I didn't have my peace about it, so I had to look at it very carefully and see what we can draw from it. But before we do that, I just want to recapitulate a little bit. We looked at the second part of chapter 2, and the subject the last time was the beginning of a major reform and how it started. When Nehemiah got the news about the condition of Jerusalem and how he was sad, and and he prayed, and when he went and when he was on duty serving his king at Xerxes, that he could not hide his sadness, and the king saw it, and the king spoke to him and asked him, why is he so sad? So he had to tell the king the reason for his sadness, and then he put a request to the king. Remember how he asked permission to go to Jerusalem, and the king was in favor, and then since he had the king's heirs, he proceeded by asking other things, help to cross the river, and he asked for wood to assist him in building. And upon his arrival in Jerusalem, he called the people. Remember Nehemiah chapter 2 verse 17, he said, "Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be a reproach or be in disgrace." And of course, he spoke about his enemies, which we'll study later on, and so on. But everything he did, you could see that he was thinking about the work. And he did not approach the work as a novice. Yeah? He approached the work, and when you see what he did, you could see that he was always thinking. And he was fearless as well. He was not a coward. And we look at this portion on the 6 headings. I'll just give it to you quickly. I know you all take notes. The first thing we said, big changes often start small and grows gradually. Remember, it started by he getting the news, yeah, and then he was sad, and this is the way everything started. And we said, secondly, change needs a driven person, and he was that kind of person. He was not afraid of hard work. He was not afraid of big projects. Sometimes you find good Christian people, but they are very timid and they are afraid of big projects, but not Nehemiah. And thirdly, we said we should never start reforming without knowing what we are getting into. And remember in verse 9, where he said, "Then I came to the governor beyond the river and gave them beyond the river and gave them the king's letter. Now the king had sent captains of the army and horsemen with me." And verse 10 said, "Then Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, heard of it. It grieved them exceedingly that there was come a man to seek the welfare of the children of Israel." So you could see the beginning of the resistance, so to speak. And we said, fourthly, change usually gets resistance, especially at first, because sometimes people do not understand what you are doing, and some people maybe they're just ignorant or they are nasty. And fifthly, we said you cannot get reform done without people working together, and that is so important. There must be unity, no matter, not only in church, even in secular work. If people are against one another and they're working, they don't work with unity, then you will have a problem. And finally, brethren, we said Reformation work cannot succeed without the divine blessing. And that was verse 20. He said, the God of heaven, he will prosper us. So we do whatever we can, and we should work hard, and we should be faithful. Yeah, we rally the troops, as we said the last time. But in the end, it is up to God to make things happen. So we got to rely on God, and I told you we must rely on God, because the work that we are doing, beloved, we have so many people against us, and evil is too powerful for us to handle alone. And we said, remember, the blessing of God will compensate for any amount of opposition. If God be for us, who can be against us? Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. 1 John chapter 4, verse 4. But the subject this evening is all hands to the work. All hands to the work. And I read chapter 3. You cannot say I didn't. But this chapter, beloved, gives us an insight into the secret of Nehemiah's success. So the question is, why did Nehemiah accomplish so much in such a short space of time? Well, first of all, he took a really tricky job and made it easier by splitting the wall into 40 sections. Remember, the wall was 2.5 miles long. I can't remember the width, but it was pretty wide. Yeah? But what he did, he split it, right? He split the work into 40 sections. Yeah? And then the second thing, beloved, when you look at Nehemiah, you could see that he had a gift for getting people to work together, getting people to agree, the builders and the other and the rest of the crew. And also, and I must say it, building the wall demonstrated God's power. And it is God's power which kept the Jews going despite discouragement and hostility. And I think we can learn from Nehemiah as we continue with the building of God's church. Now you will notice this chapter takes us on a journey around Jerusalem, stopping at every gate. And how many gates were there in the wall? 10 gates. There were 10 gates. So he's taking us on this journey, right? And he's stopping at every gate. He starts with the sheep gate, and it's amazing the way, usually you'd think that if you start here with, say for example, with the sheep gate, you will go clockwise, okay? You'll go clockwise and then you will get back to the sheep gate. Well, here he started with the sheep gate and he went anti-clockwise. I want you to understand that. So he went anti-clockwise around the city and brings us back to the sheep gate on the north side of Jerusalem. And just let me just read verse 1. I'm not going to read much. Verse 1, and then Eliashib, the chief priest, rose up with his brethren, the priests, and they builded the sheep gate. They sanctified it and set up the doors of it, even unto the tower of Meah. They sanctified it unto the tower of Hananel. And if you look at the last verse of chapter 3, and between the going up of the corner unto the sheep gate repaired the goldsmiths and the merchant. So we started with the ship gate. He went anti-clockwise, and we are back to the ship gate. Now the ship gate, I'm sure you'd want to know, the ship gate was the gate through which sheep and other animals for temple sacrifice were brought into the city. So those sheep would be offered at the temple, and for the atonement, and also for worship. Now just quickly, let me give you the names of all the gates. Although we mentioned them there, but chapter 3 is so difficult to read. So I'm just going to give it to you. The first one, ship gate, remember we're going anti-clockwise. Yeah? The next one will be the fish gate, and that is the entry point for the fishermen as they bring the catch from the Mediterranean, because that's where there were three places they were fishing: the Mediterranean Sea, the Sea of Galilee, and also the River Jordan. So when the fishermen, they come with the catch, they would pass through this gate they call the ship gate. And the third gate, so as we continue going anti-clockwise, you'll get the gate they call the Old Gate. Okay, it was the main exit on the west side. It was a very old entrance. And the fourth gate would be the Valley Gate. It was on the west wall as well. And this gate would take you down to the valley of Hinnom. And then you have the Dung Gate on the south wall again. That's where the city's garbage and refuse were taken out and to the dump. And then the sixth gate would be the Fountain Gate. And this gate would give access to the Gihon Springs. That's, I'm sure you have seen it mentioned several times in the Bible. But not only the Gihon Springs, but the Siloam water source. And then we had the Water Gate that was on the east wall near this valley they call the Kidron Valley. But it also led to the Gihon Springs as well. And this is where Ezra later read the law to the people. He was standing by the Water Gate. And the eighth gate we have is the Horse Gate. That is on the east wall again. That is near the palace. That's where the king's horses and cavalry entered. And that it was very close to the royal stables. And then we had the ninth gate was the East Gate. That gate was facing the Mount of Olives, and this is where you had the main entrance, facing again the Kidron Valley. And the last gate we had was the inspection, or the muster gate, where the troops were mustered or inspected. Also, they used to call it something like Mipkad, the Mipkad gate. So these are the 10 gates. Now, the gates mattered to Nehemiah. I'm just giving you background information as I break down chapter 3. The gates, beloved, mattered to Nehemiah. First of all, for security, because each gate controlled who or what entered the city. And as you know, Nehemiah, he posted gatekeepers and guards with orders not to open until the sun was hot. Yeah, and then of course it controls the economy, because fish and sheep and goods and water all came through specific gates and so on. And then you had worship, where we had the sheep gate fed the sacrificial system, and the water gate was tied to Ezra's public scripture reading. And then you have the sanitation. I mean, every city you must have a system, a mechanism to get rid of your garbage and the refuse. And that was the dung gate. Right? The dung gate kept the city clean by removing refuse. And then you had defense. It was important for defense as well. And that's why you had the horse gate, where the soldiers and so on and the cavalry would enter. But when you look at chapter 3, the way it started, so even though when you read it, you find that it is a very difficult read. Yeah, and if you tell me that, I will say amen to that, right? But when you look at verse 1 of chapter 3, it will get you thinking. And I just want to read again verse 1, where it said, Then Eliashib the high priest rose up with his brethren the priests, and they builded the sheep gate, they sanctified it, and set up the doors of it, even unto the tower of Meah. They sanctified it unto the tower of Hananel. Now, brethren, we have Eliashib, yeah? Eliashib, the high priest, and his fellow priests laid the first stones near the temple. And when they paused to dedicate that stretch of wall, the mood of the entire work was set. So it is important to note that they are the ones who set the tone for the entire effort, the priest and the high priest. These are the people who work in the tabernacle, yeah? Or say in the temple. Yeah? But they are the ones who set the tone for the work of the temple. And the second part of verse 1 said, they sanctified it and set up the doors of it, even unto the tower of Meah. They sanctified it unto the tower of Hananel. Now, I'm not sure where those towers are located, but they must have been very close to the sheep gate in the north of Jerusalem. Now, further on in the chapter, we read of another tower, the tower of the furnaces, that is in verse 11, and which was probably near the valley gate and so forth. Now, with that background, first of all, let us look at the coordination of the work. Now, as you look at this chapter, you will see that Nehemiah uses this phrase very often, next unto him. Now, if you look, chapter 3, verse 4 alone, he mentioned that phrase twice, next unto him. And then verse 10, verse 17, right across. So after next unto him, there was another phrase he used, after him. You get it in 18, 19, 20, 21. As a matter of fact, beloved, these phrases are used over 20 times in that chapter. Over 20 times. And don't be surprised if it's about 30 times. Now, what it means is that each and every group had a definite place of work assigned to them. Remember I told you he split the work into 40 sections. Yeah? So every group had a definite place of work assigned to them. Each person knew where he belonged and what was expected of him. Some laborers, as you know, had to rebuild the section of the wall from scratch, because there were places where part of the wall was completely destroyed. But there were other places where they just had to repair. Yeah? Now, another set of recurring phrases are over against the house or over against his chamber. That's chapter 3, verses 28 to 30. Let me just read it quickly. For from above the horse gate repaired the priests, every one over against his house. After them repaired Zadok, the son of Immer, over against his house. After him repaired also Shemaiah, the son of Shechaniah, the keeper of the east gate. After him repaired Hananiah, the son of Shelemiah, and Hanan, the sixth son of Zalaph, another piece. After him repaired Meshulam, the son of Berechiah, over against his chamber. Now, I'm tempted to ask you a question, but maybe I will not. But that is interesting, beloved. When you see, remember I told you the phrase is next unto him or after him. Now we're seeing over against the house or over against his chamber. And that is interesting. You know why? Because it tells us that the builders did not waste valuable time commuting from one end of the wall to the other. Now, you know what it is when you have to commute to your place of work. Say you living in Choiseul and you have to go to Cap Estate and you have to travel every day. That's a lot of traveling, okay? And say while you are there, while you're at Cap Estate, you hear that there's a problem at home, an emergency, but you're right at Cap Estate. What is going to happen? That will give you a lot of headache. And this is what Nehemiah tried to cut out. And this is why he had people to work very close to their homes. First of all, maybe when they take a break, they could go for lunch. You understand? Because they live very close to home. And if, there were opposition, there were enemies, people who did not like what they were doing, Sanballat and them. So if you're working close to home, yes, you can go home for your meals. And secondly, if there is a problem, you can run home to see after your family. So you could see how he thought about the work, and he cut out this long commuting, like where they had to travel, far to work. So he put people to work very close to their homes. And if you're working close to home, I guess there'll be less anxiety. Yeah? And if you have less anxiety in your life, I think you'll be more productive. Don't you think so? If you have issues, if you have problems, brethren, pressure, and then, especially, say if you have somebody who's sick at your home and you're so far away, and you're thinking about that person, it will affect productivity. But if you live in next door, if you work in next door, then that will not be such a big problem. So, beloved, progress in God's church happens when everyone knows their post and their purpose. Whatever it is, whether you are involved in teaching or preaching or greeting or cleaning or collecting, or driving or repairing or prayer, the job you are expected to do, you ought to do it. Beloved, remember, your post is where God placed you. You agree? Your post is where God placed you. Your purpose is what he is asking you to do. Now, in Nehemiah's days, every family had a post, the section of the wall, and they had a purpose. And the purpose was to rebuild that section until it stood strong again. That was the purpose. So the post is the section of the wall. Remember, 40 sections. So this is your job. Yeah? And what you have to do, you have to rebuild the wall. You have to make it strong so that it will stand again. And as a church, the post is the ministry you serve in. Yeah? Churches have different ministries. Your post is the ministry you serve in. The purpose, beloved, is the work you are expected to do so that the whole body grows stronger. The people, they build the wall so that it will stand strong again. So you, whether you preach or teach, whatever, that is your post. And what you're supposed to do? Well, you're supposed to do your work so that the church could move forward together. And of course, as we move forward, we ought to be strong. Every builder on Nehemiah's wall knew the goal, that is to rebuild the section. That's why the wall went up in 52 days, No one worked without direction. And two and a half miles of wall, and the thickness, I'm sure it was about 8 feet, I can't remember, I think I told you all the last time. Yeah? And these people, they did all that in 52 days. Yeah? And as the Bible said, they had a mind to work, and they knew their post was on the wall, and they knew their purpose. We had to rebuild that wall, and this is all they saw. Yeah, and this is all they did, and it is important for leaders to protect unity so that the church can focus on ministry. Beloved, Nehemiah didn't just hand out bricks, he gathered the workers. And spiritual leaders do the same. We, as spiritual leaders, we cannot cause division. What we do, we remove division so that every hand stays on the wall. Every hand stays on the job. Now, as we look at chapter 3 again, verse 7, we see how Nehemiah, he hired supervisors. And the reason, so that the supervisors would set out the work for the people. So they did not have to wait for Nehemiah. Yeah? Could you imagine Nehemiah alone had to go everywhere? Yeah? No, what he did, he hired, he appointed supervisors. And verse 7, repairs were made by men under the authority, yeah, or the throne, the King James Version said, of the governor of this side of the river. And we have the same thing, if you take in notes, Nehemiah chapter 3, verses 17 to 18. He appointed supervisors. Three times Nehemiah delegated responsibility for a segment of the wall to supervisors. So day-to-day problem was sorted out by the foreman. So in this way, beloved, the labor force was kept busy and time was not lost through waiting for instructions from Nehemiah. So it is folly for the officers of a church not to ease their workload by delegating some of their duties to other believers. There are places where you find either the pastor or the deacon, they do everything. You understand? That's not the way it's supposed to be. We should be able to delegate responsibilities to other people, duties to other people. Now, they might not be able to do the work as you do it, yeah? And sometimes that's a problem we have. Sometimes we want people to do things exactly the way we are doing it. So what we have to do, if you have young believers, yeah, you assign somebody who is mature with that person, so that that person can learn, yeah. And in that way, you'll have more trained people, and the more trained people you have, then you can get much more work done. But beloved, how can inexperienced Christians and new converts learn and mature if they are never trusted with some service for the Lord? So when we have young people, inexperienced people, we have to make provisions for them. Yeah? Nehemiah, he had supervisors, okay? So we have to get people, attach them to the people, to those trained, mature people, so that they will learn. Now, secondly, beloved, the priests and others showed cooperation. You know how? By agreeing to work side by side on the wall. Now, that was cooperation, but there was cooperation between people from different places and various walks of life. The only distinction recognized is that of belonging to the people of God and being engaged in the business of God. So this is what that matters. We are the children of God. All of us, if we are Christians in the church, we are all the children of God. And we should be engaged in the business of our God, our King. So Nehemiah mentions the priests in verse 1, and the rulers, if you take in notes, in verse 12 and 16 and 17. And neither group thought it was beneath their dignity, beloved, to dirty their hands alongside the working people to erect the wall of Jerusalem. So you have the priests. They were the ones who started the wall. Just imagine that. These are the people who would be offering sacrifices, during the atonement and worship and so on. They were the ones, first set of people to get their hands dirty were the priests, the high priest and the priest. Then he speaks about the rulers in verse 12 and 16 and 17, because they never saw the work beneath them. Some people in church, sad to say, but some people, their nails are so long, they don't want to dirty their nails, or they don't want to break their nails for the Lord. And some people, there are certain things they would want, they don't mind doing. And some people, they'll tell you, I'm not be able to do that. Because sometimes we see certain works as though it is beneath us. And when we look, even the goldsmiths, these are people who are craftsmen, and what do? They do intricate things. But they had to put everything aside, and they put their hands to the plow, And the goldsmiths, they were not making rings and earrings. They were handling bricks and mortar. Maybe they had the trowel and so on. They got their hands dirty. The perfume makers in verse 8. Let me just read it to you. Next unto him repaired Uzziah the son of Harhaiah of the goldsmith. And next unto him also repaired Hananiah the son of one of the apothecaries. And they fortified Jerusalem unto the broad wall. So you have perfume makers, you have temple servants, you have merchants. And verse 32, you have the guards at the east gate, verse 29. All played a role in the building project. And let me tell you something, brethren. In the same manner, every Christian has some contribution to make in the Lord's work. The work of the Lord is not for a handful of believers. I think it is very sad, and I've said that many times. It is very sad when you go to a church and only a handful of people that are working all the time. When you check the bulletin board, the same set of people. The same set of people. That name is on so many assignments. And there are people in the church who claim to love the Lord, who claim that they're serving God, and they would not do anything. They will not get their hands dirty. Even when we clean in the church, I know everybody should be in a team, and we have general cleaning. And when you do general cleaning, sometimes you have to get your hands dirty. And people should not be so proud, and they don't want to do that. Every Christian should be able to make a contribution, and we should never look at any job and feel if this is too low for me, I cannot do that one. This is for somebody else. And the same way, sometimes you look at people in society, and you think that this person is as though it's not that significant because of the work they do. Sometimes you look at the people who work in sanitary workers, and people look down on these people. They are the ones collecting our garbage. Let them strike for a week or a month to see what will happen. Everywhere will be smelling. So they are very important. And everybody in the church, and no matter what you're doing, your job is very important, and the Lord is pleased with what you are doing. When the Lord will not be pleased? The Lord will not be pleased when you are doing nothing. And there are people in church, sorry to say it, brethren, There are people in church, they always have an excuse. They always have an excuse why they cannot come to clean, they cannot do this, and they cannot do that for the Lord. Yeah. But if it comes to secular work, especially if something that will put them, on a platform, they would be, no matter what, they will be there. But when it comes to the things of God, there is always an excuse. And sometimes, even here, we have annual, not annual cleaning, but we have every half year. So we clean the general cleaning in June, and we have in December again. Now, people know these are the dates where we do general cleaning. Now, why should you, take on a secular activity or function, when you know that we are cleaning the house of God? Why should you do that? Because the things of God is not important to you. It's almost like, if I have time, I will do it. Yeah? And that is shameful when we behave that way. The Apostle Paul teaches us that the triune God allocates Christians to and equips each one, for his or her ministry. There are different kinds of gifts, he said, but the same Spirit. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but the same God works all of them in all men. And Paul concludes his list of the various works or the various gifts with this word. He said, all these are the work of one and the same Spirit, and he gives them to each one just as he determines. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 4 to 6 and 11. Some of these gifts were confined to the apostolic age, as you know, and they were given to facilitate the rapid spread of the gospel. However, beloved, this does not alter the fact that it is God alone who grants his people, and that he selects the realm of service for each one of them. So we ought not to covet someone else's gift or despise and neglect the gift which we have received from him. Now, verse 12, my time is almost up, but look at verse 12. And next unto him repaired Shalom, the son of Halohesh, right? The ruler of half part of Jerusalem, he and his daughters. Beloved, women were merely mentioned in the Near East, and when the activities are recorded in the Bible, it indicates something very significant. But let me tell you, these young women showed that they were not afraid to do work normally assigned to men, The man and his daughters, they came to work. Christians should encourage, or Christian women should be encouraged to do more than, some churches, when you go, you see the women, they are the one making tea, as though that's all women can do. You understand? Tea or a little coffee, or that's, and our ladies in the church should never accept that. Of course, we can do that, but that's not all they can do, because godly ladies, beloved, played a vital part in the life of the New Testament church. Women who are well known for helping those in trouble and who devoted themselves to all kinds of good deeds. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 10, Titus 2, 3 to 5. I cannot read them, my time is almost up. But Romans chapter 16, verses 1 and 2 and 12. The last time I think we did a whole study on these women. So, do the church to which you belong stimulate the ladies to develop their spiritual ministries. And I'm sure we try our best to do that here, to get ladies involved. And look at ladies, they are the ones spearheading our Sunday school ministry. And so many of them are teachers, and they are collectors, and so on, and they do, and I know you'll put a lot of effort into that ministry. Beloved, there was collaboration between the citizens of Jerusalem and the men from Jericho and Tekoa. If you want the scripture, I can give it to you. Those from Jericho, chapter 3, verse 2, Tekoa, chapter 3, verse 5, Gibeon and Mizpah, verse 7, Zanoah, verse 13. We have Beth Hakarim, verse 14. We have Beth Zor, verse 16, and Keilah. All those men, they came together. Beloved, let me tell you, these men did not allow their own interests to keep them away. And that is an indictment to so many churches in the world today. And I believe the reason why we always have excuses, men have excuses not to be present when it comes to doing the things of the work, because they have no zeal for the cause of God. Because if we had zeal for the cause of God, we'll put God first. It is not always easy to do that. But we should be determined, and the love that we have for God, should ensure that we put God first. Look at all those men. They came together from different communities. Yeah? Don't you think that they had other commitments and so on? They put everything aside because they were more interested in the work of God. And thirdly, brethren, just give me a few minutes, we'll finish, okay? When pride comes in, most of the laborers worked with all their heart, as Nehemiah tells us in chapter 4, verse 6. We'll see that maybe next week. But the nobles of Tekoa, remember, would not put their necks to the work under their supervision. And let me read verse 5. And next unto them the Tekoites repaired, and their nobles put not their necks to the work of the Lord. The people came, yeah? The people from Tekoa, they came, but not the nobles, not the businessmen, not the money people, not the people with reputation. Now, I like what the King James Version said. He said they did not put their necks to the work. There were some translations that said their shoulder. But when you yoke in together, it's almost like your neck. You put it to your neck so that you can bend down, and that is the idea. And those people, they thought that they were too high. They cannot associate themselves with the ordinary people. They cannot sweat together with the ordinary people. And why? It is because of their pride. Not half-heartedness, but it is pride. As though they were not supposed to mix with those people. It's almost like, who's that Nehemiah? Why should I take, why should Nehemiah be the one ruling me and taking orders from this man? You understand? So that is the way they were thinking. And all that is because of pride. Beloved, pride will always keep your neck out of God's work. Pride that causes that. And mostly all problems in church, yeah, all the problems in church are caused by pride. You know that? And those people, they will not come and work with the ordinary people because they cannot see how they can bring themselves so low. Now, I hope we don't have these kinds of people in our church. And as a matter of fact, we shouldn't have these kinds of people in any church whatsoever. But the wall still got built. But their names are recorded as the ones who wouldn't bend. And in every church, beloved, there were posts waiting, but pride says, not my job. I am not going to do that. Yeah? So the neck image, I think, it is powerful. Because when he said that they didn't want to put their neck to the work, what Nehemiah is saying that they did not want to submit and they did not want to share the burden. And that is not the way it's supposed to be in the church. And it seems to me, beloved, that most divisions, as I said, within churches can be traced back to pride. Yeah? And as Christians, of course, everybody has an element of pride, a degree of pride. Yeah? It should not be. But maybe that's the last thing that will leave us, pride. But please do not let pride get into the way of God's work. Because if pride gets in the way, you will not receive blessings from God. If pride gets in the way, you will not be a happy Christian. Yeah, you will not enjoy this peace which God gives. And you know, this love and this happiness, because you allow pride to get in your way. When it comes to the work of God, it does not matter. You know, it does not matter what position we have in society. When it comes to the work of the Lord, we all put our hand to the plow. This is what we saw in Jerusalem. All the people came together, yeah, except the nobles of Tekoa, yeah, and they came and they worked together because they knew that it was the work of the Lord, and the work of the Lord is much more important than anything else in this world. And of course, Nehemiah ended the chapter by commending certain people, yeah? And sometimes it's good to mention certain people and the work they're doing. I'm not saying that you have to praise people, but it's good. Sometimes you can mention somebody, and maybe by mentioning somebody who's working hard, somebody else might be motivated to continue to work. And these kind of things that we don't say thanks, that is not right, brethren. Today, churches are thankless. So a pastor was saying that. He said before, when you preach, they will say thank you. Today, people say nothing. You understand? And people do work where we could go to them and say thanks for what you have been doing, yeah, or you did some work in the church and so on, and the sacrifice that you made. We can say thank you for that, yeah. But let me tell you something. Sometimes it's when the person dies, yeah, the person is no longer there. That's the time you see the value of what they are doing, and it is too late. And that's why when I go to funeral, I get so mad. You understand? All the nice things they say about people in funeral, I wonder whether they ever say anything to them while they're living. You understand? They always have something to say about you, as somebody was saying, whether you like dumplings, and all kind of foolishness. You understand? I wonder whether they say anything to you when you were living, they used to say bad things about you. And when we see people in church doing good things, I'm not saying that you have to praise them, lift them up, but what is so wrong in saying thanks? And when the person is no longer there, you feel sad, and then you see the value and the importance of what they were doing. Well, we should see it, we should not wait until they die or they're no longer with us. You understand? We should see it, our eyes should be open, and to see and recognize the kinds of work that they're doing, and we should be thankful for it, and we can tell them thanks for it. There is nothing wrong with that. Nehemiah did it. He thanked them. Yeah? He thanked them for all the work that they're doing. So please don't wait until somebody dies or the person is no longer there. Say, oh, that person, when that person was there, he was doing that or she was doing that, and oh, we really miss that person. Now you realize that? Yeah? Now we realize that? And sometimes a little thank you can encourage somebody, Sometimes the person is discouraged. We are human beings, and people get discouraged. And sometimes a little thank you, yeah? Thank you for doing this. Thank you for doing that. I'm not saying that you have to come on the pulpit to say it, but you can go to the person and say it. And sometimes you'll be surprised how encouraged that person can be. And Nehemiah knew that, and this is why I won't have the time to look at it. Oh, we're out of time already. But he he saw the importance of doing that, and he did it. And another thing I want to tell you, all what we read there, as though Nehemiah is not there, but he was there. He was in the background. He wanted everybody else to shine, and he stayed in the shadow, but he was there. And it shows you the kind of person that he was. Yeah? So, brethren, we have to work. Proverbs chapter 27, verse 2 said, let another praise you, and not your own mouth, someone else, and not your own lips. And that's why he praised them. He thanked them. Yeah? And this is what we're supposed to be doing. And the result of the Jewish coordination and operation was that the wall of Jerusalem was completed, surprisingly, in 52 days. And what a work. And when people put their minds to work, you'll be surprised what they can do. You understand? Sometimes we wait when we have more people. No, we work with what we have. You understand? If God gives us 10 people, let us work with 10. If God gives us 20, we work with 20. 30, we work with 20. Whatever God gives us, let us work with it. And let us put everything aside and do the things of the Lord, just like those people did. And look at how successful they were. We can be as well. May the Lord bless us all.